Chapter 25, Tall Grass Plains. Chapter 25, Tall Grass Plains. This is it, we'll cut through the grasslands and track the scout party's trail. What do you think? The scout squad leader's eyes gleamed as he spoke, radiating excitement, confidence, and just the right amount of tension. It was a new kind of day. To cut to the chase, their escape attempt failed. Ingrid, upon waking up, spent the new day reflecting on the previous one. Where did it go wrong? Heading east might have been a mistake. No, things were fine up to that point. Replaying events in his head was a habit for Ingrid. Fleeing east, they ran into a crossbow unit. He ended up riddled with bolts and collapsed. Lying on the ground, writhing, a final bolt pierced his skull, killing him. The pain of that moment was something he never wanted to remember. But without revisiting it, he knew he would keep dying, and that was even worse. So, he replayed the day, over and over, to identify the problem. I heard it first, which gave me an opening. He'd caught an unfamiliar sound, a skill honed thanks to Jackson. After that, the heart of the beast let him calmly assess the situation. He had to break through one direction. He failed, but if I try again? He thought he could do it. After all, they hadn't been caught by the pursuing unit but had run into a stationed unit by sheer bad luck. I just need to find another route. As Ingrid was deep in thought, someone tapped him on the shoulder. It was Henry. Ingrid realized he'd been lost in his own head. Just keep your cool and follow along. That's all, Henry said. What was he supposed to be keeping calm about? Your face doesn't look good, Henry added, glancing ahead. Turning to look, Ingrid locked eyes with a soldier trailing behind the squad leader, a rough-looking man. Though his gaze seemed sharp, it wasn't meant to pick a fight. If Henry's asking for patience, he must be someone reasonable. The rough-looking soldier likely planned to bide his time and address Ingrid tactfully. Deciding that talking wouldn't help just yet, the man averted his eyes first. Acknowledging this, Ingrid gave Henry a nod and kept walking. Pushing aside the grass with his hands, he stepped further in. Soon, a familiar sight greeted him, towering green grass that severely restricted visibility. It was clear that fighting an ambush here would be unfavorable. Risking one's life to venture in was something no one in their right mind would do. What if we just avoided this place? That wasn't an option. The squad's entire mission was to scout the tall grass plains. Ignoring that and turning back would invite all kinds of questions. Claim they sensed an ambush before entering? Even if they tried to change the scouting direction, there was no way all 10 of them would agree to lie about it. It was unavoidable. Most new days began like this anyway. Still, if someone asked if he was worried. Not really. He had only fought once, but Henry had questioned how such an inexperienced soldier could survive, and the squad leader had disparaged his own skill. One real battle. It had only been a single encounter, but that single moment had been invaluable. The heart of the beast had left no room for hesitation. He'd slashed and stabbed, predicting the enemy's movements. In between, he applied what he'd learned. His heart raced. A thrilling sensation coursed through him. This is a great opportunity. Before the mission, Rem and Ragnar had both critiqued his swordsmanship. He could now apply what he'd learned from them and what he'd figured out himself. Do you see this? The trampled grass. Looks like animal tracks. Ingrid knew how to use what he'd learned. Feigning knowledge, he made a comment. Henry, catching his words, rolled his eyes and asked, "So, you've got hunting experience?" He didn't. He'd learned from Henry. Just picked up some things here and there, he answered honestly, continuing to chat lightly while quickening his pace to move closer to the squad leader. Now directly behind him, Ingrid observed the formation. The squad leader led at the front, flanked by 2 soldiers on either side. A rough-looking soldier followed directly behind him, with the rest trailing further back. Not bad. It was a well-thought-out formation, ideal for responding to sudden attacks. Of course, against a crossbow unit, formations hardly mattered. In the previous day's failure, the scout squad leader hadn't acted foolishly. He had followed Ingrid's instructions without hesitation. And he wasn't a bad swordsman either. The rough-looking soldier was highly skilled. At least intermediate level. By Narillian standards, both the squad leader and the rough-looking soldier were quite competent. Henry wasn't bad either, walking with a short bow in hand and capable of firing rapid shots. Not enough to survive dozens of bolts, but still impressive. Avoid crossbow units at all costs. Ingrid intentionally stayed close behind the squad leader. The rough-looking soldier, perhaps mindful of his superior, didn't try to start a conversation. Rustle. Hiss. Crunch. Then, he heard the sound again. Get down. Grabbing the squad leader by the collar, Ingrid yanked him back. Previously, only 4 had survived. This time, he intended to save more. Ooh! The squad leader fell back with a startled yelp. Enemy, someone shouted as bolts came flying. In that moment, Ingrid kicked the legs out from under 2 soldiers. Bolts whizzed past above their heads as they hit the ground. Ingrid, too, spread his legs wide, crouching low. A startled grasshopper leaped away in a panic. Pushing off with the elasticity of his thigh muscles and erector spinae, Ingrid stood up and threw a knife. With a sharp ping, the knife cut through the air. Though it didn't hit, it forced the enemy to flinch momentarily. That brief hesitation was enough. Thunk. He lightly struck the squad leader's forehead with his elbow. Focus. With that, he sprang forward. Thump thump thump. His boots crushed dirt and grass as he drew his sword. All-out effort. He aimed to pierce his target without losing muscle tension afterward. How to deliver full power yet retain control. You'll get the hang of it eventually, just keep doing it. REM had said during training. Ingrid was applying that advice here and now. Thunk. The blade punctured the enemy's chest. Twisting it as he withdrew, the steel split muscle, nerves, and heart. Feigning a horizontal slash, he stepped in close and swept his leg at another enemy's shin. This one had just raised his crossbow to aim. Ugh! The soldier doubled over, and Ingrid slammed the back of his head with the sword's pommel. Crunch! It felt like splitting a solid piece of wood. Having downed 2 enemies, Ingrid spotted another rushing toward him. The man wore thick cloth armor and carried a large round shield. Ping ping ping. Henry fired 3 arrows in rapid succession. The arrows couldn't pierce the armor, one wobbled before falling uselessly to the ground. The arrow had been fired too hastily, failing to fully harness the bow's draw strength. Ingrid quickly switched the sword to his left hand and swung it with force. Clang! The blade clashed with the edge of the shield, sending sparks flying. Although the strike dented the shield's frame, Ingrid's hand was left numb from the impact. Grah! The enemy roared, bringing a heavy strike down toward Ingrid's head. Thump! A fleeting moment of distraction could mean death here. Panic would only guarantee demise. Such was the battlefield. Moments like these were when the heart of the beast shone brightest. It granted him the composure to stay calm even in the heart of chaos, his robust heart of muscle and will fulfilling its purpose. Ingrid could clearly see the trajectory of the shield descending toward him. Observe well, and evade well. That was REM's teaching. Observe and dodge. There are no unnecessary parts to a sword. From the hilt to the blade's tip, everything must be used. This was Ragnar's lesson. Watching carefully, Ingrid stepped back at the very last moment, narrowly avoiding the shield as it whooshed past, close enough that the wind from its swing ruffled his hair. Huff, huff. The enemy gritted his teeth and strained his muscles to lift the shield once more. Ingrid could hear the heavy breaths from behind the shield, and he noticed the tension in the man's shoulders and movements. Through the slits above the shield, the enemy's eyes rolled frantically as they fixed on Ingrid. Continuing to fight against the shield would only prolong the battle. Ingrid flipped his sword, grasping it so the hilt faced upward and the blade faced down. With a swift rotation of his waist and knees, he swung the sword with all his might. The motion was so quick and decisive that the shield-bearer had no time to react. Whoosh, thud. The pointed blade struck beneath the shield's edge, embedding itself in the enemy's eye. Blood burst from the pierced eye, accompanied by a clear liquid streaming down the enemy's face. Ah! The now one-eyed soldier screamed in agony. Despite his bleeding hand from gripping the blade, Ingrid drew a short sword. With precision, he stabbed the thrashing, blinded enemy in the neck and withdrew the blade. Spurt! Blood spurted in time with the action, forming frothy bubbles in the man's throat as he collapsed to the ground. Over here! The sheer brutality of the scene left others stunned and speechless, staring at Ingrid in disbelief. How many had he killed in such a short span? Retrieving the sword that had pierced the eye, Ingrid wiped the blood-stained hilt roughly and moved on. This time, 6 men followed him, 2 more than before. "What are you?" The reconnaissance squad leader, sticking close to Ingrid as they ran, asked in awe. "Do you really not know?" It wasn't a time for talking, running was the priority. Ingrid sprinted eastward once more, cutting down every enemy he encountered. Even as he delved deeper than before, something felt wrong. "I've misjudged the direction." He was certain the east wasn't the way out. This time, he faced 50 spearmen, a unit the size of a platoon, far too much for them to handle. Having already lost the others, only the reconnaissance squad leader and a gruff-looking soldier remained with him. "Unlucky," muttered the gruff soldier. "Damn it," said the squad leader, scanning their surroundings with a distressed look. Ingrid, however, simply muttered, "I'll take 5 of them down." And he charged forward, resolve in his every step. From the perspective of the spearman, he must have seemed utterly mad. Charging into 50 armed soldiers? Such reckless behavior was the mark of a lunatic. Even the way he wielded his sword showed he wasn't extraordinary, skilled enough to be called experienced, but no more. Yet, in the span of that mad charge, Ingrid slew 3 spearmen. And then he was impaled by a spear. It was excruciatingly painful. His final memory was of the long banner lying behind the spearman as his vision faded. "This way. If we kill the enemies beyond the grasslands, it'll count as merit, right? Or maybe capturing them alive would be better." As he listened to the squad leader's words, Ingrid once again reviewed the day in his mind. A reflection. There's no way out in the east. This time, he resolved to head north. Practical combat was excellent nourishment. Even Rem and Ragnar, despite their hostility toward each other, agreed on this. And didn't Jackson say it too? The best way to hone one's senses was to fight for one's life. In the face of death, human focus could surpass its limits. Ingrid was living proof of those words. "I've improved." It wasn't arrogance or overconfidence, it was an objective truth. He had grown significantly. And he continued to grow even now. In the repeated days that followed, Ingrid died 9 more times in the north, 6 more times in the east, and 12 more times in the west. The battles continued. Skills didn't improve in an instant, that was inevitable. But progress, step by step, was achievable. Ingrid felt joy. He was growing. Today was better than yesterday. Hurrah! Thwack! In one of the repeated days, the sharp tip of a brave soldier's spear grazed Ingrid's cheek. It was a strike he wouldn't have been able to avoid before. It resembled the thrusts of a master spearman, yet he evaded it. And he didn't stop at evasion. The countless battles had ingrained good habits into him. As he dodged, he brought his sword down vertically, slashing from above. Thunk! At that moment, Ingrid felt something strange. The sensation in his hand was faint, almost non-existent. Though the blade had clearly severed the soldier's arm, it felt as though he had cut through a rotten branch. It was effortless. The severed arm flew cleanly through the air without a sound. A flawless strike, what many called a silent cut. The kind of strike achieved by those hailed as geniuses. Ah! For a brief moment, Ingrid's concentration wavered in astonishment. It was the first time he had experienced such a thing in battle. He could feel the solid weight of the sword in his hands, the electrifying sensation filling him with ecstasy. "Ha, this is amazing." Covered in blood, he laughed uncontrollably, overwhelmed by satisfaction. "You crazy bastard!" To the enemy, he was nothing short of a madman. Regardless, Ingrid died countless more times. And he repeated the same day again and again. Through the endless repetition, the lessons he had learned in training seeped deeply into his body. Chapter 26, The Bow. Chapter 26, The Bow. Should have dodged back there. Ingrid once again chewed over the events of his peculiar yesterday, which existed only for him. No, dodging wasn't the issue. I got too fixated on landing a single blow. Dodge when needed, strike when necessary. Hadn't he heard time and time again about the importance of split-second decisions? From countless swordsmanship instructors, and from REM as well. What good is it to see well with the heart of the beast if you make the wrong choice? You're just digging your own grave. It almost felt as if REM were standing nearby, cackling in mockery. If that bastard REM knew, he would have said exactly that. Ingrid mulled over the moment, over and over again. This time, I'll take a slightly different route. He changed his path daily. The privilege of someone stuck repeating the same day. Let's ambush the enemy scouts past that tall grass. How does that sound? True to form, the reconnaissance squad leader was once again leading them all toward ruin. Stopping him wasn't even a consideration. No, Incrid knew changing the patrol route was futile. Whichever path they chose, it would be the same. The enemies already swarming this area, lying in ambush. The enemy forces were scattered thickly across the tall grasslands. If survival was the goal, the best option was to return the moment he opened his eyes. But that's not an option. Doing so would mean defying orders, which could lead to severe punishment, even summary execution. Should he abandon the squad of 9 and desert on his own? Should he survive that way? Was that why I learned the sword? A knight, a general, a hero. Even now, he swung his blade while dreaming of such titles. But could the right choice really be to abandon these people, knowing they would all die? Was that truly the best he could do? No. Everyone has something they can't compromise on. Incrid knew he was neither a good person nor a saint. But this was one thing he couldn't let go. Some might call it conviction. Others, stubbornness. And Incrid didn't care what they called it. This is my decision. If he had lived by someone else's standards, he would have long since given up and settled into a quiet life as a layabout in some backwater village militia. Desertion wasn't an option. The goal was to find a way out of this today. Fight again. Bleed again. Kill the enemy again. This time, he used his sword as a shield until it shattered. A spear struck his head. The world spun. Of course, death followed. Whether it was the spear impaling his chest or the blow to his skull that killed him, he couldn't be sure. And then it repeated. He died. Over and over. Through these life-or-death battles, he digested what he had learned from sparring. He reflected on what he already knew. During all this, Incrid focused on only 2 things. 1. How to fight better. 2. How to escape today. To reach tomorrow. Incrid knew relentless effort was necessary for that moment. He had survived 2 of these repeating days before. But this time, it was different. I don't see a way out. Everywhere he turned, it was nothing but enemies. Locusts, crickets, tall grass obscuring his vision, and this swampy, humid terrain, what made it worth stationing so many soldiers here? Relentless bastards. To make matters worse, every one of them was well trained. They weren't ragtag mercenaries fighting for coin or conscripts forced into service. These were all salaried soldiers. Some might even consider them elite. In large-scale battles, the term elite might carry a different meaning. But on a battlefield of this size, professional soldiers counted as elite. If soldiers who trained to fight while eating regularly didn't qualify as elite, then who would? This is going to be a headache. With a surprise attack, he could kill 3 or 4. Beyond that, it would be too much. Especially with crossbowmen ready to fire, retreating while fighting would be even harder. Enough power to kill them all. Could he achieve that by repeating this day endlessly? Could he gain that kind of power? No. He already knew the answer. Back in the first repeated day, he had tried to push past a mere spearman to reach tomorrow. There's a limit to what I can learn in frozen time. Incrid knew himself well. To improve and feel the thrill of growth, he needed good mentors and opportunities. That didn't mean he wasted these repeated days. He trained his hearing, honed his swordsmanship, and reviewed his battles. He repeated this process endlessly. Though progress was slow, he was still growing. I'm good with a bow, but my hands shake when the fighting gets chaotic, Henry said beside him. It was something Incrid had heard several times before. Though he claimed to be a coward, he was confident in his archery skills. Can you hit an apple on someone's head from 100 paces? Incrid teased, looking to lighten his mood. Not 100 paces, but 30 paces is doable. If you put an apple on the squad leader's head, I'll give it a shot. Shame, I don't have an apple. Shame indeed, Henry chuckled. Henry knew how to enjoy a joke. But really, within 30 paces, I'm pretty confident. Maybe not the apple, but I could hit the head. Henry's tone was serious now. If you take down 10 enemies with headshots, it'd help, Incrid said, glancing at Henry's quiver. The flat leather quiver at his hip held about 10 arrows. It was securely strapped to his waist and thigh with leather cords, which also tied the arrows together. When loosened, the arrows could easily be drawn. True to his background as a plains hunter, Henry seemed skilled with both his bow and his gear. "Hey, what's so funny? We're on reconnaissance duty, you know." "TSK," the squad leader snapped, glaring. Ingrid ignored him. The squad leader's occasional interjections were nothing new in this repeated today. It'd be nice to take out a few with arrows to start, Ingrid thought, watching the hostile soldier following behind the leader. The man shot him a glance that seemed to say, "Don't respond, just stay quiet." Same as before. There was no need to cause a scene, so Ingrid let it slide. That'd make it easier to launch a surprise attack, he thought, letting his mind simulate the battle ahead. With the information he'd gathered through repeated days, the scenarios he envisioned were strikingly accurate. In the end, he would die. Most likely, he would die. Even with a clear skill advantage, the numbers were overwhelming. And they weren't outmatched in terms of equipment, either. That's not an advantage we have. What would REM do? There would be no hesitation. He'd charge in with axes swinging in both hands. With REM skills, he couldn't kill all 100. But he could kill enough to escape. That was the kind of explosive talent REM had. Funny, someone like him is just a soldier, Ingrid mused. Though REM himself didn't seem to mind. In some ways, Ingrid felt like he was the only one in their troublemaker squad with ambitions. He seemed to be the only one who wanted to rise above being a mere squad member. What was the point of thinking about a squadmate who wasn't even here? Ingrid shook off the thought. A small snake slithered through the short grass. The grass underfoot was getting taller, a sign they were nearing the tall grasslands. "I'm not REM," he reminded himself. As he imagined the coming battle, another thought struck him. What level of skill does the squad leader have? Up until now, Ingrid hadn't had the chance to properly assess the situation. He had merely considered things as not bad. The scout squad leader, the gruff soldier, and Henry. Even the rest of the squad members. Thoughts chained together, leading to a clear answer. "I don't have to protect everything myself." "Who?" Henry asked, puzzled, reacting to what seemed to be an unintentional mutter. "Nothing." Ingrid had been foolish. Until now, he had approached everything with the mindset of tackling it alone. He fought as if he had to protect everything on his own, passively responding when encountering enemies. As a result, he thought he had tried every option available, but there was one more left. A way to completely change the game. Crack! Crack! Ingrid tilted his neck side to side, loosening up. There was still some distance to the grassy field ahead. Striding forward, Ingrid grabbed the gruff soldier by the shoulder and pulled him back. "Who?" The soldier instinctively tensed up. "What is it?" "You were glaring at me earlier, weren't you?" Of course, he knew. It wasn't a glare but rather a look seeking consent. But for someone with such an intimidating face, even a look could feel like a glare. "No, listen, it's not like that. Your tongue's too long." Thwack! Ingrid swung a punch, but the soldier dodged by leaning his head back. "What's wrong with you? Have you lost it?" The scout squad leader asked in disbelief from the front. "Fight me." Ignoring him, Ingrid swept a kick toward the soldier's ankle, but it was dodged again. The soldier frowned. "You seemed like a perceptive guy." "Being perceptive means I noticed your irritating look." REM had once admitted that if there were a continental competition for verbal provocation, Ingrid might win. "Come on, fight me, you ox-faced bastard," no cow would look back at. The effect was immediate. The soldier's experienced face flushed red from just a few words. "Fine. You're asking for it." The two fought. Instead of drawing swords, they used fists as blades, feet as clubs. The fight was fairly even, truthfully, Ingrid was slightly on the losing end. His good, Ingrid thought. By kingdom standards, the soldier's skill ranged between intermediate and advanced. "I thought you were just a low-ranked soldier." The soldier, whose lip was bleeding, spat and asked. "I am. Lowest rank. They say promotion comes with money. Why don't you go for it?" Ingrid knew he wasn't actually a low-ranked soldier. From the moment he joined the military, he wasn't bound by rank. But he didn't feel the need to advance, he understood his own skills and limits. Of course, his mindset had shifted somewhat now. If the opportunity arose, he might pursue promotion. But it wasn't his top priority. What did it matter whether it was the criteria for mercenaries or soldier rankings? What truly mattered was the outcome. "You're skilled," Ingrid admitted genuinely. A fight like this was satisfying. The soldier was better than he'd expected, likely someone who excelled in real combat. The squad leader, his face red with anger, stepped in. "What are you doing?" he yelled, his eyes blazing as if ready to leap at Ingrid. But Ingrid spoke first. "It's sparring." "Good warm-up." The scout leader faltered at Ingrid's audaciously straightforward response. "Leave it be," the gruff soldier interjected. "There's no bad blood here." Ingrid shrugged. "Watch your mouth, leader. Your tongue's gonna get you in trouble someday." "That's for me to worry about," the leader retorted. Ingrid returned to his spot, ignoring further comments. Beside him, Henry looked at his swollen cheekbone. "Aren't you supposed to be a low-ranked soldier?" "I am." Why was everyone so surprised? Even a few of the other scouts glanced curiously at Ingrid. "You fought too well for that," Henry commented. "I trained hard," Ingrid replied. It wasn't a lie. Despite the commotion, the squad leader led them toward the tall grass field. There had to be something valuable hidden there, a treasure, or perhaps a lover. Crunch! Crack! The familiar sound signaled approaching enemies once more. This was only the beginning of another day. "Enemies," Ingrid muttered through a split lip, nudging Henry. "Shoot!" He wanted to see Henry's archery skills, but the boy hesitated, freezing at the mention of enemies. In the ensuing skirmish, Henry's skills were unimpressive. His shots lacked conviction, and he moved clumsily in battle. While observing, Ingrid concluded, "I can't work as just another squad member." Leadership was crucial, orders had to be followed. But Ingrid hadn't built those dynamics with the team. He set the thought aside for now. Repeating another grueling day, fighting desperately to survive. Through these repetitive days, Ingrid learned more about his squad leader's skills. The leader wasn't bad. His swordsmanship bore signs of proper training. "I'll accept your challenges anytime," the leader declared. Humoring him with playful defeats brightened the leader's mood. Through these exchanges, Ingrid memorized his habits and patterns. Lacks real combat experience, he thought. The gruff soldier's babysitting role made sense now. When asked, the soldier casually replied, "He's the son of someone I respected." This soldier reeked of loyalty. His sole reason for being here was to protect that kid. A noble. Fallen nobles don't count. So, the scout leader was from a fallen noble family. "I see." Letting the conversation drift, Ingrid glanced at the sun overhead. It was midday. The weather was mild, not too hot, not too cold. Scouts were all in light armor, necessary for speed and agility. Light gear, basic equipment. Ingrid took note of everything: the weather, wind, terrain, allies, enemies. If he could synchronize these elements, the battle would become clear. Chapter 27, Why is he considered lowest ranked soldier? Chapter 27, Why is he considered lowest ranked soldier? The name of the reconnaissance squad leader was Andrew. His full name was Andrew Gardner. Once a baron, he was now the sole heir of a fallen family. Andrew had one dream: to restore the Gardner family during his lifetime. "Andrew, you are our hope." Those were his mother's last words, uttered as she succumbed to illness, and they remained vividly etched in his mind. His mother had worked tirelessly, sewing for wages and serving as a maid in others' homes. Every penny she earned was spent on Andrew, on his swordsmanship lessons, food, and clothing. While his upbringing wasn't affluent, it wasn't lacking either. Eventually, the strain of work took its toll, and she fell ill and passed away. Her wish was just as clear as her words: continue the family line and become an honorable person. Andrew resolved to honor her wish. To restore his family's glory, he had only one viable path. It was, after all, an era of war. Fighting and proving his skills on the battlefield was the key. At a crucial time, when he needed training and connections, help arrived. Before her death, Andrew's mother had reached out to a man who had once been like a sworn brother to her late husband. "You have potential," the man had remarked. Thus began Andrew's grueling training, followed by his enlistment in the army. He started as a career soldier and, at a young age, rose to the rank of squad leader. I need achievements, he thought constantly. Andrew was confident in his abilities, bolstered by the experience of killing several enemy soldiers in combat. Always be cautious. His advisor and supporter frequently nagged him to the point of irritation. But Andrew didn't dismiss the advice lightly. Staying alive is crucial too. After all, he needed to survive to restore his family. Yet he couldn't give up on living a daring life either. Those who abandoned challenges were destined for failure. His father was a prime example. His father, lacking talent, had spent his days swinging a sword but achieved nothing. Eventually, he gave up on restoring the family's glory and squandered their remaining wealth. He was stabbed to death in a brawl with a gambler. A life without a future is bleak, Andrew thought. Thus, while dreaming of his family's revival, he also valued his own life. That didn't mean there weren't annoyances along the way. Among them was the troublemaker's squad leader who had caught Andrew's eye. Andrew had earned his position through skill and relentless effort toward his noble goal. But what about that man? A soldier with the lowest level of skill, a payroll thief who had somehow landed in the squad leader's seat through sheer luck. Could such a person even be considered fit for a career in the military? Andrew saw shades of his father in the man's behavior. He'll probably just coast through life collecting his pay until he dies, Andrew thought. Pretending to train by swinging a sword aimlessly was laughable enough. And carrying a sword and scabbard to hone his skills as a mere foot soldier was even more absurd. Of course, if Andrew had known Ingrid better, he wouldn't have thought so. Now, the troublemaker squad leader was staring directly at Andrew. Their eyes met. An unpleasant tension flowed between them, culminating in Andrew narrowing his brows. What's with those eyes, he thought. As he prepared to speak, the troublesome squad leader beat him to it. Your glare is annoying, the man said. Who? Was he talking to Andrew? Andrew's brows furrowed even more, his expression darkening in response. One of the soldiers accompanying Andrew stepped forward. What did you just say? The soldier had a scar on his forehead, a relic of his time as a brawler. Andrew had once said to him, "Follow me. I'll give you a better life than being a thug." Since then, the man had become one of Andrew's loyal subordinates. Though his skills were still rough, and some of his thuggish habits lingered, he was a decent fighter. Andrew had brought 3 such men into his fold. Now, those 3 quietly rose to surround the troublemaker's squad leader. Ingrid had reached a conclusion after reliving the same day multiple times. This won't work as a squad member. To ensure his comrades followed his orders and moved as one, he needed to earn their trust. How could he do that? How did knights inspire loyalty the moment they stepped onto the battlefield? The answer was simple: skill. They commanded respect through their abilities. So, what did he need to make his squad of 10 move as a single unit? What was required to earn their trust? He couldn't forge personal connections or camaraderie in just one day. The only option left was overwhelming force. Seems like your mouth is the problem. Want me to carve a pretty tattoo on it? The scarred soldier sneered, his eyes gleaming with menace, a face that had likely intimidated a few people in the past. Your lines never change, Ingrid thought, glancing at the positions of the 3 men. For them, this might be a first, but for Ingrid, it was a scenario he had repeated multiple times. Why the repetition? The reason was straightforward. Force and intimidation were most effective when they were overwhelming. To achieve that, experience was essential. Setting aside his Vala mercenary blade style, he had to rely solely on his raw skills. The first hurdle to overcoming the repetitive cycle of today was subduing the 3 thuggish soldiers. Cat got your tongue, the scarred soldier jeered. Ingrid decided words were unnecessary. So he took action. He stepped forward silently. The men reacted, flinching as one reached for his short sword. Ingrid's left foot moved slowly at first, giving them just enough time to wonder what he was doing. By the time they started questioning his actions, it was too late. His right foot hit the ground with explosive force. Mixing slow movements with fast ones naturally made the action seem quicker. It was a simple trick and a tactic to secure the initiative. And it was overwhelmingly effective. Ooh! The scarred soldier attempted to thrust his fist, holding his breath. But Ingrid was faster, delivering a sharp kick to the soldier's shin. Thud! As the shin was swept aside, the soldier's stance crumbled. Ingrid immediately followed up, striking the opponent's temple with his reinforced glove. It was a clean, decisive swing. Crack! Ooh! With a short cry, the soldier staggered and fell to the side. Ingrid's movements flowed seamlessly afterward. He turned to avoid an incoming short sword aimed at an exposed spot. As though choreographed, he grabbed the wrist of the soldier wielding the weapon and twisted it. The key was to apply just enough pressure without causing serious injury. Snap! Crack! Twisting the wrist and striking at an angle under the soldier's chin rendered the second opponent unconscious. He caught the falling soldier, carefully laying him on the ground. Then, as he stood, Ingrid picked up the dropped short sword and, without a change in his breathing, asked, "Anyone else?" The last remaining soldier among those who stepped forward was drenched in cold sweat. It was their side that had drawn weapons first. Even if Ingrid struck now, no one could argue against it. What's the meaning of this? The reconnaissance squad leader, who had been silently watching, finally intervened. "I didn't like you from the start." A brat barely out of diapers pretending to lead. Ingrid ignored the frightened soldier, turning to face the squad leader. If it didn't warrant anger, he could usually let things slide. He rarely assigned much weight to others' words or actions. That was how it had been until now. But if anger was justified? Then he had no reason to hold back. "I just don't want to end up wiped out on a pointless recon mission under a leader like you. Let's settle this with skill." Defying a superior was a serious offense. However, the situation was unusual. Ingrid was, in fact, a squad leader by rank. Had the opponent respected that, things might have been different. Instead, they outright dismissed him, letting their displeasure show. No one could fault Ingrid for not tolerating it. Even the higher-ups wouldn't care who led the reckoned squad between the two. Hadn't the platoon leader departed with a simple "take care of the young squad leader"? Now was the time. Not just watching his back, but stepping forward to take charge. So, whoever wins the fight takes command of the squad. The reckoned squad leader frowned and asked. "That's right. I have no intention of working under someone weaker than me." In truth, except for Kreis, most of the troublemakers in the squad were stronger fighters than Ingrid. But excuses were just that, excuses. It was better if the opponent took the bait and lashed out. "Come at me, you wet behind the ears brat. Have you even been with a woman? Or is your boyhood still incomplete?" Andrew's expression hardened. He had yet to experience his first time. He had spent that time training his body instead. The remark felt like an insult to his dedication, his efforts, and everything he'd done to reach this point. Clang! The squad leader drew his short sword. "Feel free to draw your weapon. Length doesn't equal skill." "Well." A gruff soldier nearby initially tried to intervene, but then shook his head and sighed, stepping back. He had worked as a mercenary for quite some time. Situations like this weren't uncommon. There had been friction from the start. It might be better to resolve it now. Lingering resentment would only cause more problems. Besides, he knew Andrew well. He had even taught the young man swordsmanship. Though still a rookie in some ways, Andrew knew how to handle a blade and had a straightforward, grounded nature. Above all, he could distinguish right from wrong. This won't be easy, the soldier thought. If it came to it, he would step in. One thing stood out, the so-called troublemaker squad leader didn't seem ordinary. His stance, foot placement, and the thick, calloused hands told a story. They were marks of hard-earned experience, not something gained overnight. "Fine. I'll fight barehanded. This bastard." Ingrid's opponent was incensed. That was his weakness, letting emotions take control too easily. The gruff soldier made a mental note to address it later. For now, he decided to watch calmly. This wouldn't be a quick fight. Neither of them was exceptional, but neither were they sloppy. Still, he secretly bet on Andrew. Though emotional, Andrew had a solid foundation and natural talent. The troublemaker squad leader gestured for Andrew to attack. Ingrid rushed in. And then... crack! One hit. What was that? The gruff soldier's eyes widened in disbelief. As Andrew charged, Ingrid made a feint motion with his left hand. Sensing it, Andrew slashed with his short sword. But the opponent read the sword's trajectory perfectly, striking the blade flat with the leather gauntlet on his left hand. In that instant, Andrew's chest was exposed. The squad leader stepped into the opening and moved with explosive precision in the tight space. Smack! Using the ground to pivot, he twisted his body and drove his elbow into Andrew's solar plexus with pinpoint accuracy. It was over in one blow. Ugh! Andrew let out a strangled groan. His legs buckled, his breath caught in his throat, and his limbs went limp. That was the nature of a vital strike. With a choking sound, Andrew curled over, his back arching like a shrimp. In a real battle, he'd have been dead. What kind of strength? The gruff soldier could only gape in astonishment. The force had penetrated through thick fabric armor. The troublemaker's squad leader's skill surpassed those of most mercenaries. And yet, a question lingered. Why is someone like this ranked as a mere low-tier soldier? Chapter 28, Ambush and Blue Eyes. Chapter 28, Ambush and Blue Eyes. Incrid let out a sigh of relief as he watched the staggering reconnaissance squad leader. Just barely made it. His trick of deflecting a blade with the back of his hand succeeded only about half the time. But practice had made him more adept, though it wasn't an easy feat. It was possible only because he had studied his opponent's peculiar habits. Without that, such a maneuver would have been unthinkable. From Incrid's perspective, it was a precarious gamble, but to any observer, it appeared as nothing less than a showcase of overwhelming skill. He batted away incoming blades without flinching, followed by a swift strike to the solar plexus that rendered his opponent incapacitated. It was the kind of feat that only someone vastly superior in skill could achieve. Are you seriously just a lowest-ranked soldier? How many times had he heard that now? It was becoming tiresome. I never took the promotion test. Didn't think I needed it, he replied, preemptively addressing the inevitable follow-up questions. He then stretched his wrist to relieve the stiffness. No damage had been done. Years of training with the sword had covered everything he needed. Strength training was a given, and Incrid's physical prowess was among the best in his unit. That level of preparation explained his consistent results. From now on, I'm the squad leader, Incrid declared. It was as if he had conquered a mountain. The previous squad leader didn't protest. He simply stared blankly at Incrid before mumbling, "Why you, and falling silent. No one else objected either. Even the soldier with the most influence after the squad leader, the one with the menacing appearance, quietly followed Incrid's lead. As expected. The path to finding an escape route continued. "Henry, what's your dream?" Incrid, now leading the formation, walked alongside Henry. It was shortly after the chaos had subsided, and Henry, still shaken, quickly regained his composure at Incrid's words. "Who? Is there something you want to do?" Henry blinked a few times, caught off guard, before nervously revealing his rather specific aspiration. Well. Survive, settle down, and run a flower shop with a widow. Of course. Everyone has their own goals. Then you need to make it back alive. What about you? Incrid turned his gaze to the soldier behind him. It was Andrew, whom Incrid had deliberately placed directly behind him when reorganizing the formation. Incrid had even allowed Andrew to keep his weapon. Watching this, Henry thought, this guy must be fearless. What if Andrew held a grudge and stabbed him in the back? Though Incrid could simply restart the day, Henry didn't know that. Andrew let out a long sigh. Fine. I concede. That's not what I asked. What do you want, soldier? Andrew, now demoted to soldier, had no room to argue. The difference in skill was too evident. The revival of my family, he answered. So, he was from a fallen noble family. Then you need to survive and return too, Incrid said. The newly appointed squad leader continued to ask similar questions, delivering the same response each time. You have to make it back alive to earn money, he told one soldier who dreamed of opening a shop. Your lover's pregnant? If you don't want your child to grow up fatherless, you'd better return too, he said to another, a rough-looking soldier who turned out to be an expectant father. Everyone's got the same goal, huh? Incrid remarked. Then let's all make it back alive. Though his intentions baffled the squad, no one objected. Incrid met each soldier's gaze one by one. Normally, such actions might seem trivial, but his earlier words had planted seeds of purpose. Even Andrew, along with the other soldiers, began recalling what they had left behind. Incrid wanted them to find their own sense of purpose. Though it began with force and intimidation, now he needed them to fight willingly. He had used this approach many times before, instilling a desire to survive. It was an effective strategy. Moving as a cohesive unit of 10 was far more advantageous than fighting alone. In fact, with this level of motivation, they could even attempt an ambush. If the ambush succeeded, everything could change. It just might work. As long as there was a chance, he would keep trying. Accepting death was simply part of the process. Through repeated attempts, Ingrid memorized the enemy's positions and numbers. Another day of knocking out the squad leader passed. What's your dream? That day also ended with the same question. It might have been monotonous, but Ingrid approached each day with unwavering focus. Eventually, he obtained 2 key elements, the plan for an ambush and a clear goal. Let's do this. Now was the moment, built on countless repetitions of the same day. He had trained enough through repetition. Let's all make it back alive, he said. When Ingrid turned around, the entire reconnaissance squad nodded. Though they didn't see the mission as particularly dangerous, Ingrid's persistence stirred something in their hearts. Then let's go. Ingrid no longer moved cautiously. He didn't need to. He had already memorized the enemy's general locations. Have you been here before? Henry, the former plains hunter, asked as they walked side by side. A few times. Not admitting it would seem strange, given how confidently he navigated the terrain. Oh, I see. After walking a bit farther, Henry asked another question. Were you a hunter? No, but I learned a few things from one, Ingrid replied, referring to skills like reading tracks and identifying the direction grass was bent. Of course, it was Henry himself who had taught him those skills in earlier repetitions. As they moved, Ingrid glanced back and noticed a rough-looking soldier sticking close to Andrew. In the field, such a soldier might make an excellent bodyguard. Ingrid thought to himself, in a fight, that tough-looking soldier will definitely stick with Andrew. Even while walking, he mentally mapped out their escape route. When they reached their destination, Ingrid raised his fist to signal the squad to stop. Phew. He took a deep breath where they stood. The squad looked around, puzzled by the halt. They had just reached the edge of the grasslands. But no one spoke up. Ingrid's leadership style left no room for debate. Shoot, Ingrid commanded, pointing in a direction. Henry, armed with a crossbow, blinked at him in confusion. Who? Where? It was a question he had heard countless times. Shoot. I won't say it twice. Henry wasn't slow to catch on. Ingrid's tone was cold, leaving no room for argument. He had pointed beyond the tall grass. Nothing was visible, and no presence could be felt. Still, orders were orders. Henry had seen Ingrid fight. Despite the rumors, it was clear he wasn't an opponent to be taken lightly. Pulling the bowstring taut, Henry narked an arrow. The string stretched with tension. Cautiously glancing around, Henry released the arrow in the direction Ingrid's finger pointed. It was a command from the squad leader, after all. The arrow whizzed through the air, and a soft thud was followed by a gasp of pain. Who? Henry was startled. In that moment, only 2 people remained unfazed, the grizzled veteran soldier with the sour expression and Ingrid. Follow me, Andrew. Having Andrew stationed directly behind him was for this exact moment. Although Andrew lacked real combat experience, his skills were more than adequate. If a soldier had talent, it was wise to make good use of it. Ingrid had learned from past mistakes. He had been trying to handle everything on his own for far too long. Now, he understood that wasn't necessary. Ingrid darted forward, and Andrew instinctively followed. The grizzled soldier cursed under his breath and followed behind them both. When the 3 soldiers pushed through the brush, they found a corpse with a bolt lodged squarely in its forehead. Surrounding it was a group of soldiers. It was a squad from Aspin's crossbow unit. There were about 10 of them. Ingrid opened with a lethal strike. Driving off his left foot, he twisted his body, and the tip of his sword pierced through the neck of an enemy soldier. Goo! Blood flowed freely from the wound. The soldier, now with a gaping hole in his throat, feebly reached out for the blade. Ingrid quickly kicked the corpse in the stomach, pulling his sword free. A dark cavity was left behind, and blood gushed out in waves. Meanwhile, Andrew swung his short sword. His movements were clumsy. It was clear that being called to action so suddenly had thrown him off. Reacting purely on instinct, Andrew struck at an enemy. Clang! The enemy, abandoning his crossbow, drew a dagger to block the attack. Amateurish. Still, it was fine. Ingrid hadn't brought Andrew here without a reason. His true value lay in what came next. The grizzled soldier moved. Without yelling a war cry or making a dramatic gesture, he slipped behind the enemy, blocking Andrew's sword. With his right hand, he grabbed the soldier's jaw, and with his left, he gripped the top of the enemy's head. Then, with a sharp twist in opposite directions. Crunch! The enemy's neck twisted at an unnatural angle. Naturally, he was dead. The grizzled soldier drew his short sword from his belt and spun like a top. Whoosh! The blade sliced cleanly into the neck of the enemy directly behind him, right between the helmet and the chest plate. The skin split wide open in an instant. SHHHHK. Blood gushed out from the severed neck. Seeing this, Ingrid swept the legs out from under an adjacent enemy. The soldier, focusing on the blade in Ingrid's hand, toppled sideways. Ingrid swiftly kicked the fallen enemy's head. Thwack! Crack! The sickening crunch of a breaking neck was accompanied by a faint, garbled cry before the soldier went limp. A sneak attack! Enemies! Shouts of alarm finally erupted from the enemy soldiers. Around this time, Allied reinforcements, including a former thug known for his fighting skills, joined the fray. Eliminate them all, Ingrid commanded. Thunk! Even before the word settled, Henry's arrow found its target. The arrow embedded itself in an enemy's chest, piercing through the gambeson with a wet thud, releasing a stream of red. You damn! The enemy tried to curse, but Ingrid didn't allow him to finish. With a swift thrust, Ingrid drove his blade into the soldier's throat, creating another hole. Phew! Exhaling deeply, Ingrid allowed his overworked muscles a brief respite. The sound of clashing steel echoed all around. There was no need to take on everything alone. This newfound understanding was reinforced as Ingrid turned to move, only to hear a guttural growl 3 steps ahead. He had seen this scene countless times before. The wary cry of a beast. Turning his gaze, he spotted it. Black fur glinted under the dappled sunlight. This creature was the reason the enemy crossbow unit stationed here had let their guard down. Ingrid had scouted multiple ambush points in preparation for today's assault. He had chosen this spot, risking his life, for a reason. It was because of that creature. The small black beast wandering the grassy area had distracted the enemy unit. It was enough to warrant such attention. Ingrid knew this well. Though unintentional, the creature had helped them. Its blue eyes locked onto Ingrid. His own blue eyes stared back. Their gazes met. One of the enemy soldiers clicked his tongue and thrust a short spear toward the black-furred creature. Owing it my life, I suppose. Ingrid had no intention of letting it die. He swept his hand across his chest, pulling out a knife, and hurled it forward. The knife flew through the air and embedded itself in the enemy's shoulder. The soldier flinched, giving the creature a chance to act. Roar! The tiny beast, no larger than a forearm, let out a ferocious cry before sinking its teeth into the enemy's calf. Blood and flesh splattered from the wound. But it didn't stop there. The beast clawed at the injured spot, smearing blood across its fur, before darting away. You damned mutt! The soldier with the injured leg jabbed his spear at the ground, but the black beast had already retreated. What a remarkable creature, Ingrid thought. It was a fiercely intelligent and vicious young black panther. The soldier with the knife wound didn't even have time to struggle before the grizzled soldier ended him. Appearing behind the enemy, he swiftly slit his throat with practiced ease. The last remaining enemy fell to Andrew, who stabbed repeatedly with his short sword, driving the soldier to the ground and finishing him off with a thrust to the face. Breathing heavily, Andrew looked around. He wasn't alone. The sound of ragged breaths filled the clearing. What is this? One of the Allied soldiers, familiar but nameless, muttered in disbelief. Ingrid didn't answer. Instead, his eye searched the fallen bodies, locating their own dead among them. One soldier had died with a spear through the face. It was an ugly death. Despite repeated attempts to save him, this soldier had always run away in the middle of battles, leaving chaos in his wake. This was simply his fate, a truth Ingrid had come to accept through the repetition of countless battles. Their enemies. Were you not prepared for something like this during a patrol mission? Remember, survival is paramount, Ingrid declared, rallying the squad. This way. The grizzled soldier tried to stop him. That's deeper in, squad leader. Are you defying me? If you wanted to resist, you should have done it earlier. Ingrid dismissed the protest and pressed forward. His silence was an unspoken command to follow. There was no other option. There was no time for explanations. As he ran, his eyes met the young Black Panther's once more. Deep, blue eyes like a tranquil lake. Ingrid turned away. Now wasn't the time to connect with a beast. Survival came first. Chapter 29, I Want to Live Too. Chapter 29, I Want to Live Too. Are you saying we should keep going forward? This is madness, said a rugged-looking soldier close behind Ingrid. After their initial ambush succeeded, the reconnaissance team, initially Andrew's squad and now Ingrid's, attempted 2 more ambushes. The second battle was against a group of 5 soldiers, and in the third, they faced more than 15. Both encounters were grueling. In the second, one of the enemy soldiers was exceptionally skilled. In the third, they were simply outnumbered. Now, only 7 soldiers remained alive. 2 more had been lost. I can't save anyone else. Some things simply can't be done, no matter how much effort is poured into them. Ingrid knew he wasn't some saintly figure. Repeating today endlessly just to save the 3 who had already died was nothing but a fantasy fit for fairy tales. It was already a miracle that they had survived this far, largely thanks to Ingrid's efforts. Of course, the other soldiers fought fiercely as well. One had lost an eye but survived. Andrew had taken a cut to the face, now bandaged with linen over his left cheek, a wound that, if they made it out alive, would be a badge of honor. Despite this grim situation, Ingrid pressed deeper. It seemed like a reckless charge with no regard for retreat. From a conventional perspective, it was indeed madness. The rugged-looking soldier wasn't lacking in skill or experience. Even in these dire circumstances, he hadn't entirely lost his sense of direction. He noticed that Ingrid was heading further into enemy territory. Seeing this, Ingrid silently nodded to himself. Not bad. Compared to REM or others in his squad, this soldier fell short, but he was still quite capable. With some training, he could at least become a platoon leader. We'll get a bit of breathing room soon, said Ingrid. The rugged-looking soldier frowned deeply. That's not what I meant, he retorted. As I said earlier, insubordination. Insubordination or not, if this is a march to our deaths, I'll stab a knife in the back of whoever's leading us, even if it's you, to find a way to survive, the soldier interrupted. This guy spoke dangerously without restraint. What would he do if they made it out alive? How could he face everyone after saying such things? Even under Ingrid's piercing gaze, the soldier didn't flinch. He was shameless. And maybe he had a right to be. What mattered most was survival, not the mission. Especially for someone like him, serving with a specific purpose. Andrew's life, his own life, those were his priorities. Ingrid looked up to check the position of the sun before coming to a halt. Naturally, the squad stopped as well. All ears turned to Ingrid and the rugged soldiers' exchange. Ingrid spoke amidst the soldiers catching their breath. If we turn back now, we're dead anyway. Behind us is nothing but an enemy force clustered like rabid wild dogs. As he spoke, Ingrid loosened the straps of his hand guards. The leather-padded gear was practical, but wearing it for too long made his hand muscles feel crushed. Loosening it too much, however, posed its own dangers during combat. How do you know that? They shouldn't even know we're here, so how could they already have blocked the retreat? The rugged soldier glanced at Ingrid's hands, his frown deepening at Ingrid's calm demeanor. Ingrid had already experienced this moment dozens of times. This was another iteration of the day he had repeated countless times. The enemy forces were numerous, and the moment they confirmed an ambush, they relentlessly cut off any escape routes. Their obsession with ensuring no leaks of their presence was consistent every time. Whoever commanded them seemed desperate to keep their ambush site hidden. The squad crouched low amidst the tall grass, their unease palpable. They followed Ingrid's lead for now, but the conversation between him and the rugged soldier painted a picture of the peril they faced. Still, none stepped forward. They simply pricked their ears to listen. Ingrid glanced up again, mentally calculating the time. In about 3 or 4 hours, darkness would fall. That would be their chance to escape. But until then, he needed to convince these men. He couldn't rely on brute force, these weren't the type to be cowed by that. His prior use of coercion had brought them this far, but this was the limit. Ambush, retreat, ambush. The constant pressure had pushed his squad to their breaking point. Now, they needed to wait. But waiting gave rise to doubt. Ingrid didn't feel the need to persuade them with flowery words. "You realize it's already too late to turn back, don't you?" he said. He was right. They had delayed too long. Turning back now would be suicidal. The rugged soldier chewed on his lips. He seemed ready to retort with, "What kind of lunatic are you?" but instead, he rolled his eyes and asked, "You have a plan, right?" Ingrid met his gaze, then looked around at the others, Henry, Andrew, everyone. Their eyes were filled with doubt and unease. As they caught their breath, a semblance of calm returned, allowing their minds to wander. They likely realized it was too late, yet doubt persisted. Ingrid wasn't about to explain the truth. He couldn't very well say he had seen the future by reliving today over and over. Or that the only way forward was to trust him unconditionally so they could move toward tomorrow. No one would believe him. So, he said the one thing he could. "I want to live too." A short but profound statement that said it all. He wasn't fighting to die. The desire to live wasn't exclusive to them. He was the same. Of course, even if he died, Ingrid would simply repeat today. "I refuse to stagnate." No matter who guided this flow or how high and solid the wall before him stood, he would not stop. For Ingrid, this endless today was a mountain to climb and a challenge to conquer. And so, "Trust me. This isn't a death march." Without further explanation, Ingrid sought their trust. He would rely on their belief to twist fate, to escape today and survive to see tomorrow. The desperation for life, the toll of repeated battles, and the anxiety that followed the adrenaline, it was human nature to cling to even the faintest glimmer of hope in such dire moments. Ingrid's two simple words carried an unshakable conviction that stirred an indescribable sense of trust in the group. He wanted to live, and so he told them to trust him. Moreover, they instinctively knew there was no alternative. What could they do here and now? The enemy scoured the tall grasslands, swarming in numbers, while every possible escape route seemed sealed. At times like this, putting faith in someone else felt like the only option. I want to survive too," Henry murmured, breaking the silence. His words set the tone. One by one, they nodded toward Ingrid. The soldier with the stern face tried to maintain composure, but even he had no solutions. Among them, Andrew was the most shaken. Beyond Ingrid's skills, his character seemed complete, as though he embodied the person Andrew once dreamed of becoming, calm and steadfast, even in such a crisis. Even in moments like these, he's unwavering. Ingrid had earned everyone's trust, refusing to give up. What a remarkable achievement that was. I believe, too. Andrew spoke at last. Unconsciously, he dropped the formal tone, but it didn't feel awkward. A fervent energy surged among the group, drawn toward Ingrid. "Then, everyone," Ingrid said, drawing their collective gaze. "From now until my signal, lie low like moles and don't make a sound." It was time to put their trust to use. Ingrid led by example, pressing himself flat against the ground and silencing his breath. The others followed suit. They didn't fully understand why they weren't escaping yet, but they trusted him, having shared something profound only moments ago. This was the time to honor that trust, even if only for 5 minutes. The soldier with the stern expression watched as a tiny insect hopped off his nose and vanished. "This guy's a master tactician, isn't he?" Ingrid's ability to guide and inspire people was extraordinary. Perhaps this was how he managed his unruly unit all along. The thought came naturally. Rustle. The sound of footsteps on grass reached their ears. Everyone began breathing as quietly as possible. There was movement nearby, and not too close, but within range. The tall grass provided good cover, its density making it difficult to spot anyone without closing in completely. The sound of footsteps grew louder, moving from front to back. Though the group couldn't see the situation, an incredible scene was unfolding. If a bird had flown above and caught a glimpse, it would have marveled at the sight. The grass quivered and swayed all around Ingrid's squad as the enemy moved through, yet the patch where they hid remained untouched, a solitary, safe haven in the midst of danger. No amount of luck could have created such a gap within the enemy's trajectory. This wasn't fortune. It was the result of relentless repetition, a trick Ingrid had mastered by living today over and over. As the sound of footsteps faded, becoming indistinguishable, Ingrid finally spoke again. "Move out. Form a single file and advance." It was time to act. Incrid straightened his crouched form, walking slowly to ease his numb legs. He thought about the sensory training he had learned from Jackson. It was proving invaluable. Judging distance by sound and discerning direction wasn't something most could learn through ordinary training. Incrid, however, had entrusted his life to an assassin to learn it and refined the skill further through endless repetitions in the grasslands. We've passed the second checkpoint. Their strategy involved ambushes and evasions, leaving enemies behind as they moved. This was the second core element of his escape route. Now only the third remained, a goal that required time. As the numbness in his legs wore off, Incrid picked up the pace. The group followed without complaint, even as they marveled internally. How was he leading them so effectively past an enemy that seemed to swarm everywhere? Reflecting on their previous battles, it felt uncanny. Every skirmish began with a surprise attack, as though Incrid knew exactly where the enemy would be. Thanks to his leadership, they had consistently fought from advantageous positions. In each of those battles, Incrid had stood at the forefront, fighting like a man possessed. The squad members knew this. He risked his life for them, bearing the greatest dangers himself. Amid the stillness of the grasslands, a strange heat simmered. It wasn't external, but a fiery resolve ignited in the hearts of the surviving allies. Incrid remained unaware, focusing only on what lay ahead. Up to this point, it had been easy. To be honest, it wasn't difficult, and it couldn't afford to be. He had already experienced this today more than 50 times. This outcome was inevitable. But why had he endured over 50 iterations of this day? It was all for what came next. They were the few against the many. Their enemy's intent was clear. They aimed to leave no survivors. In the first few attempts, he had gritted his teeth and tried to force a breakthrough. Every time, he failed. Would things change with help from his squad? Not a chance. So he changed his approach. What if something worse than catching us demanded their attention? The sun began to set. The golden-orange glow of twilight bathed the grasslands, creating the illusion of wading through a luminous lake. For now, it seemed fitting to call it the orange pearl instead of the green pearl. The sky was unusually clear, and the warm sunlight was serene as it painted the horizon. But the sun soon dipped beyond the western edge, giving way to darkness. It was time to pursue the third and final objective of Incrid's escape plan. Chapter 30, When is it time to make darkness your friend? Chapter 30, When is it time to make darkness your friend? When is it time to make darkness your friend? If that's the question, the answer was easy. It's when you're in a place you know well. A place where the terrain is as clear as your own backyard. It would be even better if it were a place where you lived until recently. Just a vague sense of the surroundings would allow you to roughly figure out your location. The more familiar, the better, say, a place you used as a training ground until yesterday. This was the case for Incrid now. It should have been an unfamiliar place by all means. It should have been a moment of surprise, but instead. Damn it. When he saw the size of the enemy, he should have been filled with despair. But that was not the case for Incrid. He had been here many times before. And not just visited, it wasn't his first time coming. He had tumbled and fought many times here. Every time, the team members who came with him changed a little, but the core composition remained the same. Andrew, the grim-looking soldier, Henry, and the other squad members. Among them, the two gangsters from the squad had often proven useful. They emerged from the tall grass and onto an unexpected scene. Some squad members thought the retreat route had been blocked, so this new path might be the only way out. It was Henry who thought so. He had a good sense of direction, just like the grim-looking soldier. He hadn't earned his reputation as a plains hunter for nothing. Henry thought that since the enemy had ambushed in the tall grass, this area might be empty. But his prediction was wrong. And that made it all the more despairing. Henry felt his legs go weak. The first thing he saw was a flaming torch. And then a wide, thick cloth that half-blocked the light. As soon as he saw it, Henry stepped back a step. Looking up and widening his view, the structure of the object revealed itself. It was a tent. Why was there a tent here? Relying on the dim light, Henry tilted his head to the side and saw the torch burning next to the tent. Beyond it, torches were lined up in the distance. There were at least 10 of them. The gaps between the torches were wide enough that only the faintest light of the moon and the torches illuminated the surroundings. What they saw was a row of tents. There were over 20 tents running along the edge of the tall grass. This was on the opposite side of their camp. So, the tents in front of them were the enemy's camp, the Aspen Duchess forces. What the hell is this? One of the gangsters instinctively muttered under his breath. Damn it, this is where we end up. Henry let out a dejected voice. Shh, quiet. In that instant, the grim-looking soldier reacted first. If they were discovered by a sentry right now, a battle would break out. And in that case, they would be killed in no time. In the dim light of the torches, they could also see several moving lights far away. It was obvious that these lights were carried by sentries. Keep your mouth shut. The grim soldier spoke while scanning the surroundings. If they slipped up, they would die. His veteran instincts kicked in during moments like this. He acted based on his experience. He lowered his posture and tried to sense the sentry's movements. He would hide and assess the situation, looking for an escape route. If he was lucky, there might be a chance. It was nighttime, and though it wasn't his plan, he had moved in the opposite direction of what the enemy would expect. They were deep in enemy territory now, but as long as they weren't caught, there was still a chance to escape. He concluded that he could survive even if they fell into the midst of a monster horde. Don't draw your weapons, stay low. He acted like he was the leader. Most of the squad followed his orders. Except for two. One of them, of course, was Ingrid, and the other was Andrew. He must have a plan. The squad leader is Ingrid. Perhaps due to a misunderstanding, the only one siding with Ingrid was the guy who had been beaten earlier that morning and lost his position as squad leader. This isn't the time for jokes. The grim soldier, hunched over, turned his head back. His voice was low, but there was a growl in his tone, like a beast. He was feeling the pressure. They were deep in enemy territory now. It was much more dangerous than facing the ambushing enemies in the tall grass. At any moment, enemy spears could come flying from beyond the tent, and there would be no time to react. In such a situation, what use was thinking? The grim soldier's response was reasonable. Ingrid had thought the same thing about this soldier many times. This guy's no joke. His skills, experience, judgment, and decisiveness were far beyond the level of an ordinary soldier. If he hadn't been so confident, or if he hadn't repeated today's situation over and over, he would have made this man the squad leader and fought alongside him. But now, there was no need for that. Although the other squad members didn't know it, everything that brought them here had been Ingrid's plan. Time, location, and place, everything. How many nights had they spent here already? How many lives had been thrown away? How many todays had they repeated? The three dull soldiers were passed out in front of the tent. They still had some time before encountering the patrolling soldiers. Knowing all this, Ingrid made his move. With a swift motion, he unsheathed his sword and slashed at the tent. The sword reflected the moonlight as it cut upward. You crazy bastard! The grim soldier gasped in shock. And at that moment, Andrew reacted to Ingrid's action. He rushed into the torn tent and drove the tip of his short sword into the stunned enemy soldier's throat. Thunk! Then, Ingrid followed him in. As the enemy soldier tried to get up, Ingrid forced the blade down, slashing the soldier's throat. The sound of leather tearing echoed, and soon the smell of blood filled the tent. The last enemy soldier was finished off by one of the former gangsters, who plunged a dagger into his heart. Grrrk, grrrk. The soldier, who had been stabbed in the heart, crawled on the ground, reaching out. He was a tenacious one. The light from the torches outside illuminated the soldier's head as he reached out. And above it, a dark shadow appeared. It was the grim soldier. He kneeled on the enemy soldier's back, grabbing his neck and twisting it. With a dull sound, the soldier with a broken neck stuck out his tongue and died. Hey, you! The eyes of the soldier with a fierce expression glowed sharply in the darkness. He glared at Ingrid. He was lucky, or else, if things had gone differently, he would have been surrounded and wiped out in the middle of the enemy's ranks. This was, in his eyes, a gamble. Move to the side. Ingrid ignored the gaze. Before the soldier could say anything, Ingrid extended his sword. You crazy bastard! The soldier with the fierce expression growled in a low voice. He could feel the deep frustration and anger. From his perspective, it was an endless crazy act. Ingrid slashed the side of the tent with his sword and turned his head back. He didn't show the slightest sign of worry about what the soldier might do to him. Even though he was living this dangerously? With only a patrol's soldiers attacking the enemy base, an atmosphere as tense as lightning crackled between them, causing the others to watch their every move. "What's your name?" "What? Your name?" Was it because of Ingrid's nonchalant attitude? Was it because of the calmness that didn't react to the murderous aura? The soldier, still holding his sword down, spoke as Ingrid asked without a change in his expression. "Call me Mac." Even as he spoke, he didn't retract his killing intent. Ingrid shifted his gaze and said, "Mac, I won't tolerate insubordination." "What?" Boom. Ingrid finished tearing the rest of the tent wall and moved out. The only choice left for the others was to follow. What's going on?" Mac mumbled to himself, locking eyes with Andrew. "Yes, we're going." Mac responded to that gaze. For now, they had no choice but to follow. The next tent was empty. It seemed like all the soldiers in the tent had gone out for some night patrol duty. Does that even make sense? The tent was large enough to hold more than 10 people at least. It was at least a squad size. If they squeezed a bit, 2 squads might fit in. The traces inside the tent showed signs of more than 10 people. Forward. After passing the tent, the reckless squad leader didn't even bother tearing the tent wall. He peeked out of the tent entrance, scanning left and right, before pushing forward. The squad followed him. By now, clouds had gathered, obscuring the moonlight. With only the torchlight, it became difficult to see the surroundings. Despite blinking his eyes repeatedly and trying to adjust to the night, it was still pitch dark. In such a place, Ingrid moved forward without hesitation. The only sound heard was the breathing of the squad members trailing behind him. "This way!" A voice echoed in the darkness. It was not a quiet voice. If there were enemy soldiers nearby, it would have been loud enough for them to hear. Mac felt a chill run down his spine. That bastard is serious. Yet there was no movement. No sign of enemies that hadn't been detected. If they had been spotted, there would have been words like "Who's there?" by now. Ingrid moved again. Now, even Mac couldn't tell the direction anymore. In the tall grass fields, it wasn't hard to tell direction with the sun still above. But now, everything was dark, wasn't it? Does he know where he's going? It seemed so. Ingrid's steps showed no hesitation. He moved, and only when he saw 2 torches next to a tent in the distance did he stop. Using a tree in front of him as cover, Ingrid gestured towards the back. Mac could barely see his hand gesture with eyes adjusted to the darkness. Mac felt like he was haunted by a ghost. How far have we walked? He wasn't sure. But by counting the tents, he estimated the size of the camp. Did we go through it? It seemed like they had walked through the enemy camp. But no one noticed. Why hadn't they triggered any alarms? It was no wonder he felt like he was haunted. "Wait here." Ingrid turned around and whispered. Looking at the tent he referred to, there were 4 soldiers guarding it. Despite the silence of the enemy camp at night, this tent seemed to be more crowded than the rest. Whoosh! As the wind blew, the torchlight flickered, and the shadows of the soldiers moved in different directions. Someone inside the tent appeared to say something, though Mac couldn't hear it from the distance. The soldier nodded in response to the words. "What are they guarding?" So, the reckless squad leader had aimed for this? Only then did Mac understand the situation. Or rather, he guessed. A thought suddenly struck him. It's a secret mission. A mission given only to the reckless squad leader, excluding him and the other squad members. That must have earned the squad leader the trust of the commander. Mac recalled what Andrew had said. He had mentioned that the squad leader had joined based on the orders of the company commander. Only now did everything make sense. Ingrid, the squad leader, was carrying out a secret mission. Was it like that? It was a misunderstanding. Mac realized something, but he didn't say it out loud. And Ingrid, knowing this misunderstanding had formed, would not have bothered to explain. There was something more urgent to do. "We'll set the fire in that tent." Ingrid raised his finger. The tent in front of them had only 4 soldiers guarding it.